So how did England overcome Italy in the second round of the Six Nations? So welcome back to BD Rugby. It was great to see that England got their first win of the Six Nations. Yes, it probably wasn't the Italy team that we'd seen against France, but perhaps some of that was to do with how England played. What I want to do today is talk about some of my takeaways from the match. I've kind of sandwiched the criticism in the middle and try and highlight some of the points that I think England did well, did badly, and perhaps where we need to improve moving forwards. I think the thing I didn't really elaborate on too much last time, partly because there's a lot of noise around it, was around the defence. But actually, overall, I think the defence looked better. I think the line speed, particularly in that first quarter, maybe first half, was really good. There's a fair number of occasions where actually the Italian team were going backwards. Players definitely making a real effort to get off the line, make big hits, take the collisions and move forward. Interestingly, I think, though, that England are probably a little bit narrow. And I think what potentially happened in the second half, in that third quarter, where England sort of seemed to struggle a little bit more, was perhaps that and this is commend the Italian coaching team, that they identified that England are a bit narrow. And if you played a bit wider, that made England feel a bit vulnerable. And I think we've talked about this on here before. I think when teams play a little bit wider, a little bit more unorthodox, they do struggle in those kind of wider channels. And I think, particularly looking forward to some of the teams that we're playing, both France and Ireland are not afraid to go wide and throw bigger passes. And I think perhaps England need to look at that because, if every team keeps it tight and tries to sort of bully England up front, I think this team has got the makings of stopping that. But I think going out wider, they look a little bit vulnerable. I think the other thing that I would make mention is that, I'm always a bit reluctant to compare to the best teams because everybody does that across all sports. And actually, a lot of the time, teams play a certain style based on their players, based on their culture, based on their club culture. So you can't always kind of replicate it. But I do think one thing that really struck me in the France-Ireland game was in the second half, Dupont made a break. Now, I think against this current England team, he would score or assist there, or France would score. What was really key for me was the Irish team, their effort of working back. There was 3 or 4 players really working hard, and I think it's not just to tackle that player, but they're also thinking about the phases beyond that, because often teams won't necessarily score from a break, but as soon as they get quick ball, it's kind of inevitable. And I think there was a few times in the Italy game. Now, it may be to do with the fact that the score and the occasion and sort of the context of the game. But I felt that England weren't doing that same work back. Now, I think that will come. Everything you hear from Kevin Sinfield is about desire and about effort and attitude. And that is that. But I think that that's something that England need to elevate their game, because I think that makes them defensively a lot stronger and potentially a bit more resilient against the likes of Ireland, France, and then potentially like your New Zealands and South Africans when they come over. So I think they're one of the little things I'd like to see England do a bit more. So combine that line speed with the kind of work off the ball and if there are breaks around the play. In terms of negativity, I think for me, the big thing around England at the moment is a lack of accuracy. But then perhaps, it's an easy way out, because really any team that's successful, whether it's rugby or any sport, probably the best teams are the ones that are most accurate. And that could be for many reasons. I mean, Ireland are often referred to as being very cohesive, and obviously that would be, but could be due to the players, could just be to do time within a certain approach and style. I think that is England's lack of accuracy due to the new coaching approach and style? Possibly. Could be the players, although, on paper, that we were picking people in form, good players with lots of caps, with lots of experience. Or could it just be a leadership thing potentially? But whether that impacts accuracy, I don't know. But I think, early on there was a little bit of zip around their play and intensity, which we haven't seen for ages. And I think, the ball was moving quickly across that back line, but, a lot of passes not going to hand or people getting in front of the ball. It's a sort of timing issue. And I think that also links to the thing about kicking. So I think they through a number of media channels, I know Clive Woodward brought it up on TV. I think it's been brought up on other on other mediums as well about this over-reliance on kicking. I must admit, when I first saw it, I thought, yes, perhaps we are. But I think what we've got to be able to do is distinguish between the fan and the coach. Yes, a fan wants the ball to be in hand, to score tries. But sometimes kicking actually is quite a weapon. It kind of builds pressure, builds stress. And actually from that, you sometimes do score. The problem is that the grubbers weren't executed well enough. So then that kind of elevates that thing of that shouldn't have been used. I think probably with a grubber, you have less room for error. If you handle the ball, perhaps you can still throw sloppy passes and still comes off. But grubber kick often leads to either a try or nothing, or you give away possession. So I think England have got to try and get that balance. I don't think they should take that completely out of their game. But again, it comes down to that accuracy and timing, and perhaps that comes with playing more of a consistent lineup and people playing together and being able to read the situation a little bit better. I think on a positive note, though, again, I'm not on my own saying this. Obviously, there was a much better balance to the team. I think you look at that team sheet and I thought to myself, that's the team that we've been crying out for, or fans have been crying out for years, really, of trying to get those people playing in basically in the positions they should be playing in. And I think that you saw that there was a bit better balance. I think Ollie Lawrence went well at 12. He carried really well. He took on contact. He drew that player. I think the benefit, which I talked about last time, and I don't think this has necessarily been mentioned too much, is that by him running 12 lines, you think actually that the forwards who were having to do that job before are then not having to do that. So there's almost a conservation and conserving of energy, which they can then apply elsewhere. So it may well have been that Jack Willis, who had a fantastic game, and I've gone on about, I think he is world class, and I think he started to show that. But he probably had that in his tank to be able to get over the ball, make tackles, do the stuff that we saw, because there wasn't an expectation on him, which there may have been in the last regime, to carry, which is tiring. You're taking ball on and doing that, and perhaps Lawrence could almost share the load a little bit. My only concern with the Lawrence thing is that it came a little bit predictable. So we were running the same line off first phase, and I think it was what really struck me was in the second half there was a situation where Lawrence ran in, and one of the Italian front pack made a really good turnover, and the commentators talked about the fact that the timing was fantastic. But to me, the timing was fantastic because they knew exactly where he was going to be. And that concerns me when we come up against probably the other three teams, because all of them have got good jackling threats and all of them will be looking at that from analysis. So it may well be that England use that as more of they're showing that Lawrence can run those hard lines. So people have got to take interest in him. But I think trying to use him either in a variation, so hitting him in different parts of the field. He is a natural 13, so him and Slade having a natural switch, or even using him more as a decoy, which traditionally they used Manu a lot for, because he had that reputation and sort of aura around him. And perhaps after a performance like Sunday, Ollie Lawrence has the same. So I think there's stuff to build on, but I don't want England to become too predictable, because I think with the analysis that goes on in professional rugby now is that if you do that, you get caught out, or you lead yourself to be potentially caught out. And I think that is my only concern with this England team, that if teams spot things and they throw something outside the ordinary, like I said last week, I think at the moment our leadership team just don't adapt to it, and I think that's still a slight concern. But all in all, I think we go in the right direction. I think England are sort of moving there. There seems a bit more of intensity about the play. We're scoring tries. I haven't talked about the line-out maul, but that was a weapon again, which I think all top teams need. So it'd be really interesting to see a Wales team who are kind of probably in a position that England are, perhaps not with the same player pool, but can draw on some really experienced players. So it'll be interesting, particularly in Wales, to see how England do that. And I think actually England's next couple of games will give us a kind of benchmark of where England are going into the World Cup, but not necessarily on results, but on that performance. So then my takeaways from this weekend. We've got a break next week. May pop in some videos depending on what's being talked about. Looking forward to the next team. We maybe do some a team video next week, and then we're looking forward and ahead towards the Wales game in 2 weeks' time. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe and come back again.